Sorry, everybody, my papers are in the other room. So good evening, everybody. Prayers this evening will be said by the Reverend Ian Parish, but before the prayers, can we remain standing in silence for 1 minute in memory of Mr. Brian Mortimer, a former member of the Borough Council and the Mayor of the Borough of Maidstone, who passed away in May.
Let us pray. Lord, the God of justice and truth, grant to our Queen, her government, and to members of this Borough Council and to all those in positions of responsibility, a sense of peace and understanding. We pray for the renewal of our town and that we might grow together in community, for deep listening and patience when dealing with division, and for local projects and confidence in sowing seeds of hope amongst the weak and marginalised. Transforming God, you bring hope to broken dreams and show ever new possibilities. Renew us with open hearts, open minds and open wills, we pray. Strengthen our independent beliefs in freedom, tolerance, accepting personal and social responsibility, respecting and upholding the rule of law, and always working together for the common good of our country. Give us strength and wisdom for the responsibilities we bear, putting the concerns of Maidstone at the very heart of our concern. Give us all hope and the humility to seek reconciliation between parties, to work together for the common good of our town, and the courage to say and do whatever we believe to protect the weak and vulnerable, the sick and those flagging through depression. We pray for our town of Maidstone, for those who've served it well, and in particular at this time, we give thanks for the late Brian Mortimer, and for those who would struggle to find joy this day. Guide our council and our nation, that through the inspiration of our own unique faith, we may find a deeper understanding of each other's needs and put an end to discord and bitterness. We pray for our country and the ongoing debates around Brexit, for the leaders of the various parties, and that the media might present a balanced and truthful representation of those who lead. And finally, Lord, give us grace to build bonds of trust so that together we may work for the dignity and flourishing of all we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please be seated. Oh, lovely, thank you. Councillor Burton?
I do reserve that right, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. It's gone out then. I have received apologies for absence from councillors Garland, Arwood, Newton, J. Sams, T. Sams, Val Springett and Wilby. Also Sue Grigg. I did have Anne Brindle, but she's made it. Are there any applications for dispensation? That's 2 phones. I will see you afterwards. Yeah, everybody. Shall I ask, has everybody checked their phones? Good children, well done, well done. Right, where are we? Are there any applications for dispensation? Are there any disclosures of disposable interest, other significant interest by members? No. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to note that given we're talking about members' allowances, don't we all have an interest?
You do. Just to let you know that I'm asking the officer to read the report to you all, and then the officers and legal will be helping with the questions, if that's okay. I've already beat you on that one.
Would you like a response to the disclosure question, though?
Yes, we would like a response to the disclosure.
Yes, thank you very much. Any payment in your role as councillor doesn't fall under the interest rules, so it's fine. Okay.
Okay, everybody? Yeah? Could you all that put their hands up disclose what your interests are? Or what?
Several people put their hands up.
Yeah. Or what? Is it all the same thing? Can I just check? Is it all the same thing? Yes? Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures by officers?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? Thank you. Are the minutes of the annual meeting of the Borough Council held on the 18th of May 2019 agreed as correct record? Thank you. Now we're going on to the Mayor's announcement. I've just done a quick note because I've been working hard. So instead of telling you where I've been everywhere. I have carried out 53 engagements so far, and the Deputy and her Consul has carried out 14. So I think we're keeping the side up. The garden party on the 24th still has a couple of places left. So if anybody would like to come along, could you please let Julie know so that she could get the catering things sorted. And the afternoon tea parties on the 20th and the 21st are going absolutely great. So, but to save money, the people that offered to help, I needed to come down a bit earlier because you can help lay the tables, mix the cream and butter the scones. Okay, but we are getting lots of people. So if the councillors who haven't done anything, who don't know 4 people in their ward, could you kindly let the fellow councillor know? Because there's lots of councillors, like Paul, ARPA has invited 12. Now that is a show. So if anybody's leaving their people out, kindly let us know, because Brian can let us know from his age concern. So, yeah, so that's all it now. Thank you. Oh, Julie will be getting in touch with everybody to let you name the times. Thank you. There are no petitions this evening. There are no questions from members of the public this evening. I have received notification that Councillor Bob Hinder wishes to ask a question of the Chairman of Bureaucracy and General Purpose Committee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Each year on Armistice Day, the county town of Maidstone, like hundreds of other towns, villages and cities throughout the country, pauses and unites to remember the fallen from 2 World War conflicts and numerous other conflicts that have occurred throughout the world. This takes place at present at the memorial site alongside Tonbridge Road. In order for this commemoration to take place at present, it necessitates many staffing costs, taking out various traffic orders, the manning of barriers at road closures on key junctions, which brings traffic to a standstill, and further increases of pollution levels from idling engines. Would it not benefit all if the War Memorial were moved to Remembrance Square, which I believe was renamed to accommodate this? I believe that this would be of great benefit to the town, residents and motorists to avoid bringing the town to a standstill. Can the Chairman of the Democracy and General Purposes Committee tell me what the current costs are for this commemoration, and if any proposals exist for the War Memorial to be moved to a more fitting location? Thank you.
Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Chairman. Thank you very much for your question, Councillor Hinder, and a jolly good one it was too. I think the question of where we hold the memorial service has been buzzing around. It's a bit of a moot point, but nobody's ever actually done anything about it. So I was very interested to receive your question. Thank you. The cost of the Remembrance Service event in 2018 anyway was £8,467. £7,500 of that was on road closures. Changing the event to finish at Remembrance Square would reduce the cost by an estimated £2,500. That needs a bit of thinking through. It doesn't quite add up, does it? So I think we need some more facts and figures in there, because you were quite specific about the road closures. There are no current proposals for moving the War Memorial. If it were to be considered, however, research would have to be carried out into the cost, impact and practicalities of such a venture, which, considering the size and location of the monument, would likely to be considerable. We're all well practised at our 2 main civic events, that's the Civic Parade and Remembrance Sunday, and the 2 routes used are well known and controlled. Traffic stopped at the Bridge Gyratory for Remembrance Sunday, by its nature, disruption to the town is minimised because traffic levels are lower and the significance of the occasion is widely understood. We also advertise the road closures in advance in accordance with our agreed event plan. If, however, councillors are minded to consider it, the appropriate forum would be the Democracy and General Purposes Committee.
Councillor Hinder, have you got a supplementary question?
Not at this time, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, everybody. I missed out on my Mayor's announcement, so I'd like to come back on this, and it was generally missed. I'd like to ask to group leaders to pay a very small contribution to Brian's memory. So if you'd like to go first, Councillor Cox.
For those of you who were actually at the service, and I'm pretty sure there was as many as that could have been there, it was a fantastic service. The service that Brian gave as both a member and a councillor, and before that a member of his community, was outstanding. Certainly when I joined the Lib Dems back in 2011, I think he was mayor very soon after that, and it was an entertaining year, and indeed an entertaining mayor-making day. And I have the only photograph of him looking like Captain Pugwash with the mayor's hat at the wrong quarter. But the many tributes that were paid at the service, I think none was so eloquent as our own Councillor Hodson, who I think gave as much detail as any of us could recollect. And I think it would be very remiss of me to try and think I could get any better. But other than he will be very much missed by many councillors and staff and members of his ward. So, as I think they said at the end of the service, thank you, Brian.
Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have to say, I totally agree with what the leaders just said. There is just one small memory I have of Brian, and it was his immense respect for his fellow man and his politeness. He was up for election. He was running as a county councillor. He wanted to be elected as a county councillor for my patch. And I didn't give it much thought. And one Saturday morning, there was a knock on my door. And to my great surprise, there was Councillor Brian Mortimer. And he must have seen the surprise on my face. And he said, Councillor Gooch, he said, I just thought I'd respectfully pay you a visit to let you know that I will be knocking on doors in your patch as I'm running for election. Well, he could have knocked me down for a feather, so he came in and had a nice cup of tea. And he was so polite and gentlemanly about it. And if he's listening now, thank you very much, Brian, because I shall always remember that.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. When I was first elected in 2012, Brian Mortimer was one of the first councillors to make me feel welcome. He was one of the most friendly councillors. His funeral, the eulogies played, I couldn't compete with at all. I found out a lot about him I didn't know. I found out he was a builder. He was in a band. He drank beer. He was one of the best. That's in spite of being a Liberal Democrat. He was a family man, a friendly man, and a welcoming man. He'd be missed by his family, and he will be missed by this council and his party.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Cox mentioned it already, I think, that the eulogy that was given by Councillor Hodson showed how much cross-party support Brian Mortimer had. He was someone, in my experience, who made everybody smile. And I've got a particular reason for that, because in the 2015 campaign, we were doing canvassing all over the place. Towards the end of the day, I was absolutely knackered, if I can use that phrase in the council. And I was knocking on this door, not getting much response. And up pops a head over the fence on the other side with a glass of rosé wine in his hand. He said, "Forget all that rubbish, John. Come over and have a drink with me." And that was kind of what Brian was like. He was a fantastic character. And I would just like to say that I think Brian's passing through this world made the world a better place, and I think that is something I would like to remember Brian by. He was a fantastic character. Thank you.
Councillor Powell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first time I met Brian was the first day that I came into this council. There were 4 UKIP elected representatives, and we all decided to abstain. I don't know whether anyone was around that.
I do remember, yes.
Like the dreaded Conservatives got in, which is what and Brian literally ran from over there and said, "What are you doing?" And I didn't know who this chap was. Afterwards, he apologised, he calmed down, he said, "If there's any help."
Oh, sorry. I think you probably heard most of that bit anyway. He said, if there's any help I can give to any of you at any time, please let me know. He said, passions run high. And he had, strangely enough, he had Liberal Democrats running through his blood when he was in here. I'm not quite so sure he did when he was out there. He was just like one of the lads. He could have been anything, yeah. But he was an absolutely super chap. I had a lot of time for Brian in the few years that I got to know him. He was very passionate. He loved people. He loved life. He loved his beer. And, yes, he will be sorely missed. So, God bless you, Brian.
Just before we go on, I would have said something earlier. A lot of us that have been here a long, long time know Brian. What a gent he was. I just hope that in the future we get more gentlemen like him, because I think we get a lot more done. So good luck, Brian. Have a lovely rest. And we'll all meet again one day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, once again, it falls to me to report what's going on in the council, what's been going on since the beginning of May. I've attended the Kent and Medway Gateway Partnership. I've had the delights of going on swan upping, which I haven't done for 35 years since I was actually in one of the boats that took all the councillors. That was a fantastic day. We've been to the Maidstone Advisory Group, the Maidstone Strategic Advisory Group. It's an early morning meeting where we meet with most of the businesses around Maidstone. Jeff Miles is the chairman of that group, and he holds that together. The Maidstone Economic Partnership is chaired by Paul Thomas, and he too is representing business, but the businesses around town, not just the retail, which is what the Strategic Advisory Board does. The Cobtree Manor Estate, where I am one of the trustees on that charity, we've had a new car park go in, which has brought a lot of delight to many of the residents and the people who use the car park, because it was a bit of a dust bowl. So that's brilliant, and it has actually increased the visitor numbers in the most recent months. I've had a meeting with Mike Whiting, Cabinet Member for Highways, Transport and Waste, at Kent County Council, where we were speaking about better partnerships with ourselves and moving forward and getting a lot of the projects done and underway. The Kent and Medway Civilian Military Covenant Conference, I attended with a member of staff who is our representative for the military covenant that we support. That was a day down in Dover and was very useful, as I came away with some good contacts for the flag raising that we had in the town square about a week later. The business rate retention pool briefing that we all attended was, well, not all of us, about 20 of us did, was very informative, and then gave rise to us being able to give a lot of attention to the very good list of projects that were put forward by our officers and service committees, and indeed some extra projects that were put forward on the evening. I'm very glad that we were able to get all of those through. perhaps at the detriment of one of the projects, but I still feel that the officer concerned will be able to do a great deal of worth along the A20 near Turkey Court with the money that was left. I had mention, obviously, of Brian Mortimer's funeral down here, so I won't say any more. I've been on a back to the floor with the Planning Enforcement Department to go to Gypsy and Traveller sites and other areas of Maidstone, and indeed specific sites where some contravention of the planning that's been agreed has been undertaken. And seeing the officers' extent of work has greatly been reduced in the last years since we've had the review of the planning service, but there is still work to do. The Armed Forces Flag Raising Day, which I mentioned, myself and the Chief Exec have given the Kent Developers Forum, or the Kent Developers Group, our presentation of our strategic plan and our vision. That was very well received by all the visiting developers and people from around Maidstone and the wider area across Kent. We've had the Kent Leaders meeting at Oakwood House, where all 13 or 14 leaders meet. The colour is changing slightly as we look at the different leaders, and indeed it was the first time for some of them from Swale and Tunbridge Wells were warmly received. I've been to the LGA conference with Director William Cornwall. There was a lot to take in. It was very busy, long days for 3 days. I've been to the county show. We enjoyed the One Council event up at Moat Park, where we saw staff testing out the new high wires, the golf Segway, and it was a very good team-building event to do and to take place. I've had a KMTV interview about the community asset and the return of the Walnut Tree pub to the community asset register. And also last Thursday, I went out with the Rough Sleeping team, where we evicted, or I saw the eviction of the last 6 people who were living underneath the car park itself. That's pretty much all I have time for. That's all the bullet points I had, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Now can I ask Councillor Perry, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, there's a lot of good things in there, I have to say. But some of the things I really would like a bit more information on, really. You talk about planning enforcement, which is very important, and I'm extremely glad you've taken an interest in that. But clearly, it is an issue very much in the, dare I say it, in our rural areas. And I think from a transparency point of view, it would have been nice to have known that you were getting involved in this, because it is such a serious issue in our area. So I'm pleased that you've got involved, because I think planning enforcement for many years hasn't had the priority that it is now getting, and I'm very pleased that it is now getting a lot more priority. I'm pleased about the business retention and the projects. I think that is a good news, piece of good news, and I can say that with the benefit of my own ward, I have to say, but it is a very good piece of news. Over the years I've been a councillor, I've been involved with Cobtree a lot, and I've seen that develop, and I think Cobtree has done really, really well, and I think the car park and increasing the visitor numbers is an extremely good thing, and I'm very pleased to see the results of that. I don't know how far Cobtree's got with the railway, but I haven't been involved with it for some time, but it would be lovely to know, actually. I like to play trains with the Cobtree, but that's I know there's a lot of money involved there. The other thing is the meeting with the KCC is very, very important. I do feel that is something we must encourage a lot, and I'm pleased to see that you're doing that. The issue I have in all of this, I think, I'll be very brief, is the whole transparency issue. We need, I think, as a council to be very, very transparent in all the dealings we're doing. I know we've had a major leak, And my own experience in government is that the best way to control leaks is to be as transparent and as open as possible. And I would hope that, as a council, we can take that as a policy. Other than that, I think we're coming up to the holiday period, and I'd like to wish everybody a good holiday and say thank you very much. I'll switch my micro off.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm very pleased that the leader, the great leader, has been earning his money. We've got remuneration on the agenda later, and so I'm thinking, oh, I'm actually beginning to add up all the things he's been up to. So thank you very much for that. And it just goes to show how much work does go on. I was going to say behind the scenes, but that's not quite right, is it? You're out there, outside this council chamber, outside Maidstone House, flying the flag for Maidstone, getting involved with the business environment. So good on you as well. So thank you for that, Leader. I'm particularly pleased that you're building a strong relationship with Kent County Council Highways. It has been the bane of our lives, and we are looking forward together. That is so important from all sorts of angles, not just the future local plan, but lots of other angles as well. So well done, and please keep up the good work. The business retention you mentioned, I hope that all members are remembering that they have another £1,000 to spend this year from the business retention money. So do please bear in mind that it's there for our communities. We've got there are so many things that we could be spending it on. The Mela suddenly springs to mind, but there will be other. I know there's somebody who wants to carry out a dementia awareness initiative. So do please talk to your local areas and find out what small contribution you could make. But apart from that, thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I now ask Councillor Mackay, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, you have been a busy bee, Martin, out and about. Business rates retention. That was a delightful meeting to attend because that everyone went away happy, I think, from there. Particularly Councillor Denise Joy, who was floating on cloud 9. The £17,000, which will go towards the relief of your parishioners. Community, I beg your pardon, yes. I've never seen a councillor quite so happy, quite so delighted, and I think I was very pleased that I was there to witness it. But I think the other schemes were worth doing, and they crossed a great deal of areas. So, delighted. I'm delighted also that you're having a good chat with KCC about highways. In the southeast of Maidstone, we've seen probably by far and away the largest construction of homes in the last few years, most of which predicated on highway improvements, none of which have actually been started. We still have, I think, approximately 2,000 houses to build along the Sutton Road. I would ask that we suspend granting planning permission until such times as we see some evidence of traffic mitigation being put in place. Now, I'll leave that with the council and with our leader. And as you can see, Mr. Perry, councillors, I am already in holiday mood.
Councillor Pell, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it does seem that there's lots of good things going on, and certainly as far as a PR exercise for Maidstone, I think this has been wonderful what you've done, Mr. Leader, and obviously it's really kind of put us in there amongst everything and showing that Maidstone is alive and well. But equally, I would also come on to say that we are not just about PR exercises. As a council, we're about doing things and making things happen. And as many of you know from what I've talked about before, things like enforcement, I think we've had that touched on that tonight, has got to be the most important thing we do as a borough, to see when things go wrong, what is the council doing about putting it right. Sometimes we might need more resources from that. Resources have to come from somewhere, but that's the type of thing that I would like to see talked about within this chamber. Whether it be planning enforcement, and I'm sure that if you doubled the size of the actual kind of team, it'd only halve the issues anyway, but at least it would be doing something. Environmental enforcement. I also kind of read, whether it was right or wrong, that 70% of appeal cases on the planning that the council was actually losing. So what can we do to redress that balance? Are we not, it's the highest in Kent. I'm not trying to pull us down, because the job that we're doing kind of is excellent, but these are the things that matter to the people in the borough of Maidstone, and I would just like to see what we can do about that. But maybe that's other questions for other times. And as Mr. Mackay said, a happy holiday to everybody.
Thank you, leaders. I will now open this item, questions from the council members, for a period of 15 minutes. Questions must relate to the issues raised by the leader and the other group leaders in their speeches. They will be answered as directed by the questionnaire and will not require a response of all group leaders. Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leader, you mentioned the Kent Developers Group. Can you confirm if a list of sites, the call for sites list, has now been compiled?
No, I couldn't confirm or deny that a list has been compiled. They've been submitted, and in the timetable that SPI has put forward, they will be looked at in that order. At that event, we were not talking about sites, we were talking about our strategic plan and our vision for the borough, for no specific sites.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, before I ask a question, I'd just like to, Malcolm and I are quite pleased we've got a new position. We seem to be rotating slowly around the council chamber. Perhaps our next stop might be where the leader of the council sits. You never know. But, you know, we'll have to live in hope, and that I suspect. My two questions are, of the leader, you've got two tonight based on what you said. Firstly, on highways, following on your meeting with Mike Whiting, I'd like to know, in terms of improving our relationship, how we're going to work with Kent County Council in terms of looking at issues around the Fountain Junction. This was a big topic at the JTB last week, and it is one of great concern to residents in West Maidstone that something comes forward fairly quickly on that to start to relieve the problems we have there. And whilst obviously talking about highways and transport, it'd be remiss of me not to invite yourself and all councillors to the Cycle Fest event we're holding, or the Maidstone Cycle Campaign is holding on the 28th of
Councillor
September.
Harper, be good and ask your questions of the leaders,
Okay,
please.
so there's it's three questions, because that's two. Then the third one is about Armed Forces Day. Obviously, we've got the barracks. I'm asking another question of the leader.
Sorry. It was one question at a time, and I asked you out of respect because you had your hand up. So now it's Councillor Bryce's turn to come back, then I'll come back to you. Sorry. I'll let you answer it first.
It was myself and an officer who went to see Councillor Whiting. We spoke about the new highways officer that will be based at Maidstone Borough Council, and I think that is one of the first steps to getting better conversation going, and we can understand a bit more perhaps of what KCC intend to do in various things. But I'm afraid at no stage did I bring up the Fountain Junction specifically. Perhaps with the roadworks that are going on, it may give them more time to think again whilst they've got the roads closed as to what other things they might be able to do. I have heard rumours that there may be something that could be done at that junction, but it would be quite costly, but it should be looked at. I certainly would be in favour of looking at anything that can improve that side of town as opposed to any other. But it is a bit of a pinch point from one end to the other along Hermitage Lane and coming out onto the Tunbridge Road. But I think a good start is certainly the new highways officer. And when I met him, I think they'd been going through the process of interviewing. So I don't know whether anybody can bring us up to speed as to whether we have got one appointed or indeed whether that's appropriate.
Thank you. Councillor Bryce?
Apologies. My question, just to clarify, has a list of all the sites submitted been compiled?
I have not seen a list of all the sites that were issued in any list that's been compiled. Neither, I believe, should I have at this stage, or anybody from any committee, because that's the way the whole process takes place.
Councillor Harper?
Armed Forces Day. Obviously we've still got the barracks in town, but generally, obviously, Armed Forces Day is to celebrate all three forces as a national day to celebrate the role of the armed forces. And I just wonder if perhaps in Maidstone we could look at doing more for that day within the town and the borough. And I wondered if, as leader of the council, you might like to indicate whether you would be supportive of perhaps a council looking into a bigger event next year.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, actually, Paul, to talk about this. The civilian-military covenant, I think, is something that we belong to, but I don't believe many of our councillors, members, and indeed our staff realise what it involves. That, I think, we'll park for one moment because I think it's a much bigger subject. Your question was about Armed Forces Day. I would certainly like to make it bigger than it is, to show the respect that our veterans and people who've served demand, and actually should have. I will say that up until the Civilian Covenant Day, we only had one person attending. And it was a bit of a push with one of our officers, Orla Sweeney, and myself down at Dover. We went round the stalls and we said to the military, to the Navy Reserve, would you please be able to come? It would really make a difference. One of the problems, I think, that they have is being everywhere in that week, because it's a celebration. You can do your event at different times during the week. And indeed, Kent County Council had their flag raising day in the morning. And then we had ours in the afternoon, which was perfect, because it meant that people could split themselves and come down to both. I think ours was quite a personal basis. A lot of people did stop in the square and were unaware of it. There were some RBLI gentlemen there, obviously ex-veterans and servicemen, and we invited them to come up here and have tea with us and the servicemen that attended. We also had the Maidstone Sea Cadets there, Salvation Army Bugler. So I think, really, we made it sort of impromptu, but planned, a bigger event that was going to happen. But I would certainly entertain it becoming better. I don't know if bigger works, but certainly publicising it to our residents, because it would be very nice to see a lot more people there.
Thank you. Councillor Burton. David Burton, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Leader, we mentioned earlier the issue of transparency and so on. Can you reconfirm to me that you told me that you issued instructions that yellow papers would be prevented to access to many of us who always enjoyed them, and confirm by what authority you did that?
I'm sorry, Councillor Burton. I've just been informed that that was not covered in the original leader's speech. Would you like to reword that?
Madam Mayor, I did listen very carefully to your words. You may have not said them how I heard them, but I thought when you spoke earlier, you actually said questions arising out of the leader's report and the group leader's responses on this occasion. So if it's not possible, I withdraw the question.
Item 13, independent renomination panel, the 24th to 25th of April 2019, page 6. I'm asking now for the Chief Exec to open this discussion so that we know exactly where the papers is coming from. I thought it would be wise if the officer spoke.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I will keep my comments brief. It's good practice to review on a regular basis the it's so difficult to say this word, remuneration for councillors. And that is why we invited an independent panel to come and do that. So the recommendations set out in this report are derived from the research, inquiry and conclusions drawn by that independent panel. And you'll see from the very full report attached to the officer report, the process through which that panel went, the information that they gathered, and the basis upon which they have made their judgments and recommendations. I'd just like to say that their research included a number of interviews with some group leaders, a questionnaire survey to elected members, and a number of officers from a governance point of view. So, using that information, they have made recommendations for us now to consider. In considering those, I hope this mic is still on, you have a number of alternatives that you could consider in your approach to this, to either accept or reject as a group of recommendations, or to go through them one by one. And if you wish, you may consider the figures upon which the allowances are recommended. You could choose to vary those if you wanted to. So I'll leave my introduction there and look forward to hearing the debate.
Yeah. Sorry.
Do you want to move from the chair first?
Yes, I'm going to move on forward, yeah. Yeah. I move the recommendation of the Independent Remuneration Panel as set out on pages 6 to 9. Is that seconded? Councillor Cox. Yes, sorry. Everybody's hands up at one time.
Madam Mayor, I won't dwell on my objections to the 2 new allowances to the member or to the group leader whose votes happen to prop up the minority Lib Dem administration in this borough. I will only ask, pursuant to Rule 22.4, that we have a named vote on these matters so that the council taxpayers out there can see who it is amongst us who believes that this largesse should be charged to the taxpayers' chit. In making this request, ma'am, I believe I am joined by Councillors Bartlett, Bryce, Burton Jr., Parfitt, Reid, Perry, amongst, of course, Rose and Young. Thank you.
I'm ever so sorry, but all the people that was indicated, could you kindly do it yourselves, please? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Can you stand? Yeah. Can you stand, please? Thank you very much. Is there going to be any debate? Councillor Bryce.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's, I know you can't interview everybody, but it would be, I would request that if you have the opportunity to conduct a review in the future, and this is no criticism of the councillors who did speak, but in terms of a diversity and the challenges we face, recruiting councillors from all backgrounds to participate and get involved in democracy, especially working, I'm going to speak as myself, as a working mother. I think, you know, as working parents and balancing council life, it's a privilege to serve as a councillor, but maybe some of those views could have been put across. So potentially that's a cohort to consider for inclusion in the future. The other point I would make is visiting members. In my ward, the majority of our caseload is planning matters, and so we can be representing our residents at planning committee every time there's a sitting planning committee. And the fact that as a visiting member to that committee, if I'm reading the report correctly, we can't claim our expenses when we're travelling in from a ward that's furthest away. If I've got that wrong, I apologise. But the fact that we can't, as visiting members, claim the travel expenses involved in that is of concern if that is a recommendation that's included.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing a debate on this issue this year. It's a very important issue that I think we should be allowed to discuss at length. I'm obviously a new councillor. I'm 25 years old. Got married last year, and I got a mortgage this year. I'm probably in a slightly more precarious financial position than some, if not most, people in this room. This money would be useful, but I didn't get involved in politics for financial reasons. And I don't believe that we need a pay increase, or whatever the correct term for it is, every year. I don't believe that the taxpayers of Maidstone should fund this increase every year. Certainly not the interesting additions that we've seen. I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
Firstly, I'd say on the question of visiting members, my understanding was has always been the case that if you visit a committee, you cannot claim expenses. That's always been the case. It's just this report merely spelled out the current policy. Secondly, I would just like to say I'm really disappointed that this report becomes what seems to be for some a political football to score points. But I'll leave it at that, quite frankly, because you know who you are.
Councillor Blackmore, please. And then you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, here we are again. Pay rise last year, pay rise this year. My concern with that is most people who are in employment have a pay review. A pay review does not necessarily mean it goes up in line with inflation. It could go down. Company has a bad year, your salary could stay the same, it could even drop. It depends. I will ignore the jibe from Councillor Mackay about this issue being a political football. You know as well as I do that you are very happy to pick up all sorts of issues and use them as political footballs. So I will put that to one side and ignore it. My concern with this actually is twofold. The first is there were only 13 people who responded. 13, that's less than 25% of councillors. So we are actually taking into consideration the opinions of very few people. I accept that the independent remuneration panel will have done their research, but surely if there was such a huge appetite for an increase, more individuals would have responded. Less than 25%, very poor in my opinion. The other thing is, I don't understand why the chairman of the Democracy Committee is suddenly attracting a chairman's responsibility allowance. 4 meetings a year. So £4,000, 4 meetings a year. The chairman of planning, their special responsibility allowance is about 8,000-ish. They attend minimum 17 meetings a year, plus adjourned meetings, plus, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll have to go to you, Martin, because Clive isn't here, also briefings before the actual meeting as well. So, as a rough guide, that could be, I don't know, 17 plus 5 plus another 17, that's round about 40. You could say the chairman of planning deserves a much higher special responsibility allowance than any of the other chairmen of any of the other service committees, but I will leave you with that thought. Sadly, in its present form, I do not feel able to support the recommendations, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have Councillor Burton, please? Matt Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Burton Jr., as I was referred to earlier. Thank you very much. No, not by you, Madam Mayor, not by you. My question will be succinct and brief and directed to the leader of this council. Given that on page 16 of our reports this evening, the deputy leader is now going to be provided with a special responsibility allowance in recognition of work undertaken, delegated by the leader, would the leader agree with me that that money should therefore actually come as a delegation of his special allowance, considering that no additional work is being created, rather that the load is being shared?
Nicely now, please. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members. Well, Councillor Mackay's comments doesn't surprise me, really, because his party loves spending other people's money, and probably will continue to do so, and got us in the mess we're in now. So I don't really take much notice of that. When I read this report, I have to say, I thought I'd had too much sun, actually, because I couldn't really believe it. We seem to be recommending higher inflation increases for no particular reason as far as I can see. These are allowances, let's be honest about it. And I just, quite frankly, I just don't think we should, the timing of this is not good either, just because we have a report, and I have nothing against what the Chief Exec said about the process. I fully understand that, but that doesn't mean we automatically go in and give ourselves an extra increase. And quite frankly, I find it slightly worrying that we're going to recommend an additional allowance, so we're going to trouser a little bit more money from our hard-pressed council taxpayers, which quite frankly I find pretty awful, really. And I would like to just say, in the words of the great Margaret Thatcher, no, no, no. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Powell, please.
Yeah, this does seem quite a contentious issue tonight, but times are hard, times are tough across the whole country at the moment. We're hearing it from kind of both the red side, the blue side, and in central government. And the word austerity, we often hear that as well. But I think that in this council, we should have a bit of self-austerity. I don't want to be seen the same way as Kent County Council was when they voted themselves 15% extra money. That was absolutely awful. It was obscene. It was disgusting. And I don't want this council to be seen in exactly the same way. So on the note of that, I will be voting against this tonight because I think we should be self-governing and responsible to the people of Maidstone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Daly, please.
Well, Madam Chairman, I wasn't going to speak to this at all, but I must say I've been exercised by the attitude of some of the members opposite, because I'm also a member of the County Council. And I don't know why we bother to have remuneration panels if we don't listen to what they say. But I have to tell you, in the County Council, where there's a very, very large preponderance of one party, I won't name them because you know who they are, the remuneration panel there decided that it would be a good idea if we had 1.5% increase. And that party decided that was not right, and it should be 15%. In fact, the dot didn't mean anything at all, and the 15% was voted on and voted through, and those of us who decided that we didn't want to take that extra did take it, and I did take it, and I'm still taking it, but I've donated every penny of that to charitable causes, because I knew jolly well if I didn't take it, it'd go back in the pot and it would be lost. So I know where that money's gone, and I'm quite happy to talk to my constituents if they want to talk to me about the money which I earn at this business that we take on as elected members. So I come back to the business again. We've got a remuneration panel which is very professional, goes through the whole procedure, and I believe they actually invited 13 members to talk to. They certainly didn't invite me, and I can't remember anybody saying, would I like to come to be interviewed? But if I had, I would have told them, as I think other people have, that my time is a darn sight more than 12 hours a week on this business. And I am retired, of course, and been retired for many, many years. But that's not the point. The point is I do take on board myself quite a few things. I don't actually send in any kind of allowance form to anybody, and I have never done. So I pay my own travel, I buy my own car, I run my own car, I pay the insurance for it, I do all the business for it. I also pay my email address forms and the amounts on that, my telephone bills, my postage, and all the other bits. I put not a penny do I ask for back, other than the basic allowance which we have here. And if you don't think the remuneration panel is worth spending money on every year to tell us what we could do officially and probably sensibly, then I don't know why you have a remuneration panel in the first place. But don't let's get too pie about this, as some members are. Either accept their recommendations or reject it. You can do that. Of course you can. But named votes, all this business about frightening us, that the population might say, why are you getting paid for doing anything that you do voluntarily? You don't have to stand. All right, fine. Just don't get elected, don't come here and don't
Sorry,
argue the toss.
Councillor
Thank
Daly,
you.
your time's up. Can I ask now Councillor Bob Hinder, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm probably seen by quite a number of councillors as the little man who sits at the back of the room and rarely speaks. But I raised a question tonight with the aim of trying to save this council money. And I think the answer I received from Councillor Gooch indicated that there was money there that could be saved. Against that, I'm faced with this report, which wants to spend more money. And that, I must say, I'm against. So the little man who sits at the back of the room most of the time has decided to stand up and say what he thinks. And I think this is bad. I think there are certain recommendations in there that shouldn't apply, and I can't support them. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wanted to bring attention to the fact that we're not entirely representative of Maidstone in this chamber, and if we wanted to reduce our allowance, we could make it zero. But if we were to do so, I think we would end up with a chamber here full of people that are very wealthy, people that may be retired with a lot of time on their hands. I think we really need, this is done by an independent panel, we really need that independent panel to do a gap analysis between the profile of members in this chamber and look at the profile of people in Maidstone. Because the idea that we're doing this and those people out there are looking at us is the wrong way to look at it. We actually want those people out there in here. And I think, I've been to many democracy days, and when you talk to people and you bring people in to show what happens in an authority, and you explain what goes on, it's very unattractive to many people when they actually see what's involved, and people that are right on the breadline that we really need in this chamber to actually put their views across and help convince us the sort of challenges they face. Those people look at it and say, there's no way I could do that. And I don't think that we're addressing that in any way if we talk about we need to freeze, we need to go back. I think this is an independent panel. I think if the independent panel has taken a step back from the council and looked at a wider picture, I think rather than going against them, I think we should say, come back on Democracy Day, we'll get people in here, we'll get a good profile of Maidstone, we'll work out what the gap is between people that are not serving on the council, people that are, and we'll work out a way of chipping away at that. That's what I think.
Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a bit puzzled. I must have been looking at a different laptop and a different set of emails. But the questionnaire that I responded to was online, was addressed to all councillors. And on that questionnaire was a question, words to the effect, would you like to be interviewed? Would you be prepared to be interviewed? Now, if you didn't read your email, tough. And if you didn't accept the opportunity, tough. I read it for once. I don't read all my emails, but I read that one. So I'd like that point noted. Secondly, when I look at the number of hours I personally work, I'm not going to speak for anybody else. I work an awful lot of hours a week, and I run a parish council. And if I work out my hours, it works out to not even half, not even a quarter of what the national minimum wage is. And in fact, the expectation is, in being the service of a councillor, is that just less than half, 45%, is not payable. It's a freebie. It's voluntary. So I don't get this piety bit, coming from my colleagues across the way. The amount of money... Yeah.
There's so many meetings going on in here.
Yes.
I would like the respect for this councillor to be listened to, and the next person who stands up afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The other item I would like to mention is that it so happens that I stand to receive about 3 or 4 special allowances here. So you'd look at it and you think, oh, she's in the money. But actually, I can't. I can only accept 1 special responsibility allowance. Even though I'm a group member, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. A lot of people think I'm the other, actually. But as it happens, so I just thought I'd like to straighten that out. The level of money that we pay ourselves, I understand, in comparison to other local councils, not Kent County Council, I think I should have been a county councillor, is quite average, low to average. We are not, as I understand it, one of the higher payers, so I don't have a conscience about it. I think the level of our responsibility over the past 11 years that I've been a councillor has increased considerably. When you look at the aggravation and the trouble that we had when we tried to get our local plan through, I don't know about you, but I took a hell of a lot of flack, and I'm darn sure that my colleagues over here took a lot of flack as well. And some of the council meetings were really far more than they ever would have been in the past. So I think we're earning our money here. Finally, I would like to add that... Oh, all right. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Can I get Matt Burton to talk again? No, I'm sorry. If you've already spoken, I'm not allowed to ask again. He's just, yeah, he's seconded. I'm just going to ask him now. Councillor Cox, would you like to come?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I think I'm sure you've all read the papers. I'm sure you've gone over them with a fine-tooth comb, and you will have noticed that this is a 4-yearly review. Not yearly. The people who were asked to come on the outside panel, the remuneration panel, have done a lot of work. They did a lot of work, I believe. 1 or 2 of them were on there, the same people, 4 years ago. And then, I believe it was turned down at that stage. So we certainly are not having a remuneration considered increase every single year. Councillor Gooch has also pointed out that although there would be the different allowances available for the responsibilities that she has taken on at the previous leader as well, and when I became leader, it made every sense to ask the deputy leader to carry on because it was the same person, and the information and the knowledge bank she had is difficult to just transfer over straight away. Should that leader's percentage be considered to be transferred to somebody else? Does the chairman of a committee pass on the money to the vice chairman when he can't be there? I don't think it does. But I think the position of deputy leader, as we have at the moment, adds to the amount of work you've just heard that the deputy leader does. However, this information that we're given here is to take us forward for the next 4 years. And so therefore there may be somebody else who doesn't have the other responsibilities and therefore would get nothing at all other than their basic allowance, which, as we've heard, is with a 45% discount on the £15.26, which is the average earning of the people of Maidstone. I don't think there are many people, and we have a gentleman sitting at the end in the public gallery who's come to see what happens at council meetings and what the involvement is of councillors. I wouldn't want to discount anybody who has a mortgage and anybody who's on a low income of a pensioner's amount And I think we need to be considered in this. I'm not going to say political, whatever, but we should all consider if we want to be replaced when we leave this chamber by anybody out there, not specifically someone who's on a certain salary or consideration. I actually did answer, I'll finish my sentence, I did answer the question that was asked of me, should we have consideration for single parents? And indeed we should. We should consider paternity and maternity leave for councillors. Thank you.
So are we going to be moving to the vote now? Take them all together? Happy to take it together, everybody?
Okay, good, and this is the named vote. If you could indicate whether you are for, against or abstaining, I will call out each person's name. So, Councillor Atkinson. Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Blackmore. Councillor Bryce. Councillor Brindle. Councillor David Burton. Councillor Matt Burton. Councillor Chapel-Tay. Councillor Clark. Councillor Cox. Councillor Cumming. Councillor Daly. Councillor Fermor. Councillor Fissenden. Councillor Fort. Councillor Garton. Councillor Gooch. Councillor Harper. Councillor Harvey. Councillor Hasty. Councillor Bob Hinder. Councillor Wendy Hinder. Councillor Joy. Councillor Cadker. Councillor Kimmons. Councillor Lewins. Councillor Mackay. Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Mortimer. Councillor Mumford. Councillor Nagy. Councillor Parfitt-Reid. Councillor Perry. Sorry, it was Perry. You have to wait your turn, sorry. That's okay. Councillor Powell. Councillor Pearl. Councillor Ring.
Against.
Councillor Robertson. Councillor Daniel Rose.
Against.
Councillor Rose. Councillor Round.
Against.
Councillor Spooner.
Against.
Councillor Vizard.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
Councillor de Wiggenden.
Against.
And Councillor Young.
Against.
Thank you. Yeah, 20. So I'm sure some of you will have been keeping a tally as we've gone through. So the voting was 24. That's 2-0 for, 24 against, and 1 abstention, which means that the recommendations fall, and therefore we will revert to our current arrangements. Yeah, that's it, yeah. Oh, sorry, I'll switch.
Right, can we carry on, everybody, please? Now we go on to item 14. I call upon Councillor Mrs Gooch to move the recommendation of the Democracy and General Purpose Committee relating to the introduction of a selection process for the appointment of non-voting parish council representative to serve on the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee. Recommendations are on pages 28 to 29.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation as set out on the papers on pages 28 and 29.
Councillor Webb. Thank you. Perry, would you like to talk?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When I read the paper, that there is an anomaly on here that I think if I read the paper correctly, I'd just like to highlight, because I think it does need to be looked at again. And it is the question of the representation from Calc and from other parishes. Now, at the moment, there are something like, I think it's 40 or 41, 39 or 40 members of Calc, Kent Association of Local Councils, and there's only one parish that is not a member. Now, I understand the position, the one parish not a member, but I see it's a bit like joining the golf club. You know, if you pay your membership dues, then you get the advantages of it. If you don't pay your membership dues and you decide not to be a member, then you can't play for free on the course. That is how I see it. So there are advantages and disadvantages of being a member of CALT and not being a member of CALT. But the problem here is, it seems, that the one parish that's not a member of CALT does seem to have an advantage, because they'll always be one of the nominated people. Now, I'm not sure I've got this right, but I can see her shaking her head from the Chief Executive, so I may have misunderstood it. But that's how it seemed to read to me, and I felt that needed to be reviewed again by the Democracy Committee. I'm not asking for this to be rejected tonight, but I would like to see the Democracy Committee have a look at the whole issue of the CALC and the non-CALC members' relationship on the Audit Committee, because I think it's quite an important issue. So I'm not going to oppose this, don't get me wrong, but I would like to ask, through you, Madam Chairman, that the Chairman of the Democracy Committee does have another look at this, because I think it's something that's troubled me a little bit in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Perry, the Chief Executive said she's quite happy to clarify what's actually there.
So just to add to what Councillor Perry has said, it is an important point of principle that any parish council can make a nomination. I think the assumption has been made that CALC can only make one nomination and the one parish council that's not part of CALC can do the same. That's not quite accurate. CALC can make as many nominations as it wishes, and the purpose behind the report here is to introduce a process by which selection can then be made from any nominations put forward. So I can see where the misinterpretation may have come from, but I just thought it would be helpful to clarify that CALC are perfectly entitled to make as many nominations as they like.
Councillor Perry, quickly.
No, I won't. Thank you very much for that clarification. I think it's very important. But maybe in the future, this is an issue that might come up in other things, and I would quite like the Democracy Committee to just keep it on its agenda just a little bit. But thank you very much, Chief Exec, for that clarification. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
So, sorry. Yeah. So are the recommendations agreed? Thank you, everyone. Item 15, there are no reports from the Strategic Planning Infrastructure Committee this evening. 16, there are no reports from the Communities Housing Environment Committee this evening. 17, I call upon the Head of Policy, Communication and Governance to introduce his report recommendation on page 31.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I commend the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Public Report to Council for consideration.
Just a question, really. The money is recommended by the Ombudsman. Could someone confirm that they were paid to Mr. Kay?
Yes, I can confirm that the monies were paid and all actions have been carried out. So yes, and a letter of apology as well.
Everybody? So can we, are the recommendations agreed? Thank you. Item 18, I understand that the leader of the Liberal Democrat group also wishes to make change to the membership of committees by adding Councillor Wilby as a substitute member of the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee. I therefore move that the wishes of the leader of the Conservative group and the leader of the Liberal Democrat group with regards to the membership of committees be accepted. Has someone seconded that? Yeah? Councillor Rose. Any? Councillor Perry?
I really am confused. I always thought we had to give this notice of committees, and we've been very careful to do it well in advance. But so why is this suddenly, it's not on the agendas, so I'd like a little bit of a clarification of why this has happened.
Sit down on my papers in front of me. I've got item 18.
Well, it's meant to be.
I can only go by my crib sheet.
Is there an urgent update? There isn't one, is there? I haven't got anything. Yeah, but you have to give notice by deadline. You have to give notice.
Sorry. Councillor Bryce.
Oh,
hang on, sorry.
Hang on. Okay, so the item of membership of committees is on the agenda, and this issue to do with Councillor Wilby is just an additional small thing. Substitute. Yeah.
Councillor Bryce.
I was just going to clarify the question that Councillor Perry was asking. So I think the clarification is that because it's a substitute member, it can be added on the fly, so to speak. But could you clarify if it was full membership, whether or not it would need to be done in the proper way?
Yeah, I mean, the items on the agenda, it's dealing with other committee members. This is a very small additional change. We very often take updates, make amendments on, on the item already on the agenda, so it's fine.
Does anybody else like to talk on this? Can I take it, everybody, that it's agreed? Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could take your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Did everybody hear that? I don't think I ever need a mic. Yeah. Right, agenda item 1. I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Garland, Harwood, Newton, J and T Sams, Val Springett and Councillor Wilby. Adding to that is Councillor English, Councillor Gregg, Councillor Russell and Councillor de Wiggerden. Thank you. Are there any... Oh, sorry, Councillor Perry.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Blackmore ought to be added to the list as well.
Okay, thank you. Right. 2/3 of the members present at this meeting must vote in favour for a resolution for the nominee to be appointed as an honorary alderman. I now call upon Councillor Gooch, Mrs Gooch, to move the motion proposing that the title of honorary alderman be conferred upon Mrs Fran Wilson. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the benefit of people watching the webcast, because I think this is quite an It's the first time we've ever bestowed this honour on anybody, and I think it's quite right and proper that the public should be fully aware. So in case they haven't read the papers, I'm sure members have, but please bear with me while I just briefly read out Section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972 states that the council can confer the title of honorary alderman on any person who, in our opinion, has rendered eminent services to the council. And I'm proposing that we confer that honour on Mrs. Fran Wilson, simply because, there are a lot of reasons. Fran was a member of High Street Ward for nearly 22 years, leader of the Lib Dems from 2007 to 18, leader of the council twice. Then before stepping down in May 19, she was leader again. I misread that, I beg your pardon. But during that time, she was chairman of just about every committee there was. She was certainly hardworking, determined, very thorough, hugely experienced, a consummate politician, and a great strategic thinker. Now, for example, she saw the significance of having a local plan, and despite considerable opposition, it was her strength and determination that got it to the local plan stage, to the examination stage of the local plan. So, very briefly, I think it's highly appropriate that she is the very first person upon whom this council bestows the honour of honorary alderman. I therefore propose that in pursuance of that Section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972, this council confers the title of honorary alderman upon Mrs. Fran Wilson in recognition and acknowledgement of her eminent services rendered to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. I call upon Councillor Cox to second this motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Once again, the appointment of alderman has been laid out in the papers that we've been given. But as a person who's not known Fran for the 22 years that some of you have, the more learned people and longer-serving councillors, I just wanted to say that I think Fran is deserving of this, not only because of what she's done in the council, and I've heard that she has been the chair of almost every committee. And when you go on to a committee and you get advice from somebody, if they've been the chairman of that committee, you perhaps listen a little bit harder. When someone can say they've been the chairman of virtually every committee, you listen intently. And when you perhaps don't do what they've advised you, you walk a sort of an ashen or glass path in front of you. Her grasp of many of the subjects that she likes to talk about and reminds you of all the things that she does know, it's not a sketchy knowledge. It's an intense knowledge, and of somebody who I believe this council has respected in the times and the years she's been here. And I think bestowing the status of honorary alderman is our way of saying thank you for the service that you've given to our borough and our town and our residents, and also, to a certain extent, the smooth running of the council through changes, both from the cabinet system to a committee system, and who knows where from there on. So it's very easy to second this motion, and I thank, on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group, Councillor Faye Gooch for actually proposing this motion, but it's a very easy one to second. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. I now call upon other councillors if they wish anything to say. My first one is Councillor Joy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I just needed to stand up and say, as many of you may or may not know, Fran and I and Clive have worked together now for the 22 years as a team, and I don't think I could have had anyone that served me as an individual councillor when even though I was senior to Fran. She just wowed me with her knowledge, and she didn't let anything go. She would keep on and on at something until there was an outcome. And I think that's why I've got to stand here and say, I hope you're all going to agree this. If we're going to do this, let Fran be the first one. I can't think of anyone else at this time that I could stand here and say that she deserves it. And I'm not going to say any more than I hope you will vote. Thank you. In favour.
Councillor Perry, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will repeat what I said on earlier occasions, actually, that I think Fran is still a wonderful servant of this borough. The words were originally quoted by Frederick the Great in another thing, but I always think that Fran has been absolutely marvellous. She's a formidable politician. I know that, sitting on this side of the house. But we've also been friends as well, and I've also loved having our philosophical chats and conversations. We don't agree. I certainly didn't agree with her on the local plan. Sorry, Councillor Gooch. But I shan't dwell on that. I can't think of anybody better to be the first honorary alderman of this borough. This is cross-party. There's nothing, to do there. And I'm going to enjoy, because one of the things sitting here, I keep thinking Fran should be sitting there, not necessarily in the leader's job, sorry, Martin, but just sitting there. And me addressing her as Councillor Mrs. Wilson, because I can't do that because she's just Mrs. Wilson. But I can, and I'm going to jump the gun here, and probably the monitoring officer will shoot me, but I'm going to say Alderman Mrs. Wilson. And I'm proud to say that, and I wish her all the very best in the future. I'm sure Fran will still play a major, major role in this borough, and it gives me great pleasure to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Harper.
I suppose at point of information, first of all, at the next count, assuming this is approved by 2/3 of the meeting tonight, which I think it's going to be, when Fran's presented the certificate at our next council meeting, will people have the opportunity to, make a speech while she's actually sitting there? If so, I don't need to say any more tonight.
I said yes. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm actually even more inclined to support Mrs. Wilson's nomination for this title as I read the briefing note, which actually is for such a previously worthy political opponent. I'm delighted to see that she will now be apolitical in public, and I'm sure that will help us enormously. So my support is heightened. But I will just ask one question. Perhaps somebody could advise me what the process is going to be for this council deciding, as they may from time to time decide, how an honorary alderman will participate.
Just one moment, Councillor Burton. We're just trying to find the answer.
Yeah, it says there.
Yeah. So, Councillor Burton, thank you. The protocol makes quite clear that the role is ceremonial, and whoever is elected as an honorary alderman doesn't have any other speaking rights at a council meeting than a member of the public, so has the same speaking rights as a member of the public. And the role is purely ceremonial.
Is everybody okay with that answer? Right, next, Councillor Mackay, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, actually, it was my colleague, I think, that put honorary alderman on the agenda for this council. When I wasn't a councillor, and when I became a councillor, I was less than impressed. I thought, why do we want honorary alderman? But hey ho, the wheels were in motion. I think if I remember rightly, I just merely abstained. But it's come full circle now, And I've got to say, in spite of my initial reservations, I could not vote against this move tonight because she hits every area. But I hope that what Fran Wilson has done is set the bar. And it's, so honorary alderman does not become something that's bestowed on every councillor that has served more than X number of years. That is the bar. That is the level we expect an honorary alderman to become. I hope so. And in spite of my misgivings, I could never object to Fran Wilson becoming an honorary alderman, in spite of his error.
Okay. Councillor Bryce.
I just wanted to support this motion. Although we're on separate sides of the political divide, Fran was very kind to me when I first became a very naive and new councillor with a lot to learn, although she didn't like learning it, and was very supportive to me, and I know other women in this chamber. So I'd just like to recognise that formally and support this motion.
Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that if there was more people like Fran Wilson in politics, the world would be a better place, because Fran always respects everyone's other view, and that's what you need in politics. We should all respect each other's view without getting upset about it. And to lose someone like that, when we really need people like that these days, is a bit of a sad loss. But there's one thing, she just gets a certificate. Is there something she can wear? I mean, aldermen everywhere else, do they have a badge they can wear? Like with your past mayor, you get a little badge or something. I didn't know if, as an alderman, would she have a badge or a pin or something that she could wear when she's out? Thank you.
I'm sure Councillor Harper's committee would love to have a look at that. Would that come under you? Oh, Councillor Gooch. Oh, I'm sorry, Fran. I mean, Faye.
I answer to anything, Madam Mayor. You're all right.
That's what I like about you, see, that's why I love you. So can we make a decision then? Is it all going to the vote? Does everybody agree it's Fran? Agree. Well done, everybody. Yeah, organise the party. Right, bear with me, bear with me. I'm on the ground for one member of our staff that I think we all know, who's absolutely brilliant, never lets us down. She's looked after me for years. Members, just a little announcement before you go. Caroline Matthews, of the Democratic Service Team, is doing a charity wing walk. One hell of a brave lady, I say. In aid of the Lashton Air Warfare Museum and Alzheimer's Society on Friday the 26th of July at Eghorn. Our Debbie here has got all the nice forms to fill in, your sponsor forms. So if you could all sign it before you go, I know Caroline would really, really appreciate it. Oh, and I need some raffle prizes. I don't know if I said that early. So if anybody can sort out, much appreciated, please. Good night, everybody, and thank you.